Hi, everyone. Hi, good morning and welcome to this very special day and the webinar that we are in. So first of all, I want to welcome all of you and acknowledge you for taking out time on this beautiful Tuesday morning and being a part with us. So it's going to be a unique session today where we are going to touch upon some key disruptions that all family businesses face and how we can manage them. And we promise that there'll be some key learnings and insights you'll draw from today's session. So I know all of you must have joined it from different places across, and we are so happy to have you. Let me give you a few announcements so that we all are on the same page. So for all the participants are requested to keep your mics on mute, please, during the session. And during your Q&A, you can unmute your mic, and then ask questions. And if you have any questions, so either you can raise your hand on the Zoom, or and then you'll be invited to ask one by one. So before we begin, let me share the details about our speaker, Mr. Harsh Chopra. He is Mr. Harsh Chopra advises founders on managing a multi-generational family business. So he facilitates and consensus building among all family members about the family core values, roles and responsibilities, compensation principles, and governance policy through an off-site family retreat and co-creation of a family charter. He has conducted knowledgeable sessions for more than 1,000 CEOs in partnership with leading banks across 10 cities. Articles and interviews have been published in Economic Times, Hindustan Times, Mint, Business Standard, and CNBC. He is a chemical engineer from IIT BHU with a 30-year corporate experience in Hindustan Unilever, Bausch & Lomb, and Luxottica, where he was the managing director. So let me not take more of your time, and let me call Mr. Harsh. Can we have you, Mr. Harsh?
Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. Diksha, good morning. Good morning to everybody. So, what I propose to do is to share my experiences in helping families. Mostly I work with mid-sized families, turnover of say 100 to 1,000 crores, mid-size range across different cities in the country. I've also taken sessions for groups of 80 to 100 promoters in partnership with the ICICI Bank over the last 3-4 years. So without much ado, let me get started. And a very warm welcome to all of you here. This is an interactive session. This is for you, it's not for me. So please feel free to ask questions. As Diksha said, for any questions, either you can raise your hand through Zoom or otherwise, or type something in the text box. Dinesh is with us. He's one of the co-hosts, and he's an accomplished company secretary, and he will coordinate the Q&A. So without much ado, let me very quickly upload my presentation for you, and I will run you through this. And okay. Is that visible now? Dinesh, is that visible? The full screen?
It's visible. Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
Okay. Okay, here we go. We are going to talk about the 4 disruptions that all family businesses face and how to manage them. And I'm talking about a multi-generational family business. Most of the families I've worked with have, family members ranging from 4 to 6 to 8. Anything above 8 or 9 is a large family and relatively more difficult to manage the expectations of everybody. There are some families in India which are 4th and 5th generation, very successful and very good at organizing themselves. And one of them is North India's leading family, the Munjal family. Sorry. So they have 20 family members. I was listening to a CII webinar by Mr. Sunil Kant Munjal, and he was explaining that they have 20 family members in their main core business, Hero MotoCo, and about 100 family members outside the business. So managing 120 people in a fourth generation in a very successful business run across 4 generations is really a benchmark. It's like a gold standard. In South, Murugappa Group is very well known to be a very well managed, very professionally managed, with a lot of, where the family governance is very good. Okay. So, when you start a family business, the founder, the first 5 years, 10 years, it's the infancy phase. The infancy phase is a time of firefighting. It's a time of firefighting all day long. किसी को पता नहीं कि कंपनी चलेगी कि नहीं चलेगी. The founder typically puts in a 12-hour day. He's taken a bank loan. He's put everything he has into it, and he very passionately believes that it's going to succeed. But only 1 out of 10 companies succeed. So infancy is a time of a day and night operation. It's a one-man show, and the founder is running around trying to manage a growing business, and nobody knows whether it's going to work or not. The second stage is the go-go stage. The go-go stage is a stage when the business is successful. It might take you 5 years, it might take you 10 years. Suddenly the cash flow is positive. Customers are placing repeat orders. And the founder says, "Achhe din aa gaye." He is the most surprised amongst everybody that it's actually worked. So go-go phase is a phase that the founder succeeds. The company is cash flow positive, repeat orders are coming in, and the employees get confidence in the future of the company. Ye to chal gayi. The founder buys his first Rolex watch at this phase. That's a symbol for many entrepreneurs as having arrived. In North India, you hear of Vaddi Gaddi, Vadda Flat. And within the family, people say, "Arey, ye to hame pata tha, jab class 5 mein tha, to hame pata tha ek din bada aadmi banega." So that is the go-go phase. And the go-go phase is marked by, let me share with you, cash flow is positive, customers place repeat orders, everybody has confidence, it's succeeded, the founder is like a rock star, and the first Rolex watch has come in the family. Then we come to the second stage, which is the adolescent stage, and most companies do not cross the stage. This is the stage when the company has become multi-locational, there are several hundred employees. And this is also the stage when the second generation joins the business. The founder by now is 50, 55. And the company changes from being a dictatorship to a coalition government, because there are a lot of decision makers who jump into the company at this time. Adolescence is also a time when the promoter realizes that his leadership style, which he used very successfully in the go-go stage, does not work anymore in the adolescent stage, because it's a multi-locational unit. Maybe he's operating in 5 locations, 6 locations, and he has to depend more on processes and systems, and he cannot run it in the same style that he managed the go-go phase. So let me take you to the adolescent stage. And very few cross the stage. So the company needs systems and processes. It can't be micromanaged anymore. The second generation enters the family business. Leadership changes from a dictatorship, from a one-man show. And the old guard, these are the people who worked with the founder since inception. They worked for 10, 15, 20 years, and they have a very good comfort level with the founder. They resent the entry of the next generation, and they're not sure how they'll be treated. Also, sometimes at this stage, the founder, he realizes that he has to bring in functional experts, maybe a chief marketing officer, a chief operating officer, an IIT engineer. And the old guard don't like this. And there the fight breaks out between the old guard who worked with the founder for the first 10, 15 years. And their approach is, Arey sir, aap mahan hai sir, you're God, sir. So he's idolized and he succeeded. Why not? But then, the new breed of professionals, they ask a lot of questions and they don't accept the way of working that was okay in the first stage. So there's a clash which breaks out. And the old guard tell the founder, sir, ye to laptop wale hain, these chaps are MBA types, they are 9 to 5, they are mercenaries, somebody pays them 10% more, they'll move on. We are the loyal people who really brought you to where you are. And the professionals come in and they tell the promoter that, look, these old guards, they have outlived their utility. So give them a generous handout and be done with them. Otherwise, they will put their foot in everything, every new initiative that we drive. And those promoters who can manage this fight correctly and who can manage to separate them and take the company forward are the ones who make it to the next stage. So coming back, we have infancy, we have go-go, we have adolescence. Now we come to prime. Prime is the best stage of the life cycle. So what happens in prime? Prime is a stage of predictable excellence. You can predict I'll grow next year by 36% and your actual growth is very close to 36%. So you understand your company, you understand your capability, you do not accept orders you cannot execute. You know who you are, you know who you are not. You have best-in-class professionals as function heads. Your employees are engaged, motivated, and empowered. They can do many things on their own. You don't have to keep a watch on them all the time. The values and vision are institutionalized, not just in the founder's head or his son's head, but all the senior team and the middle management, they all understand the values and the vision. Where do you want to be 5 years from now? You have a succession plan in place for 2 levels, the top level and the second level. If suddenly your head of sales leaves, to uski jagah kaun aayega? How will you replace him? Have you groomed somebody or not? Have you trained somebody or not? Then you have a 1-year operating plan and a 5-year strategic plan in place. And if you stop a middle level manager and ask him, what's your 5-year strategic plan? He will be able to give you a rough outline. Then in this stage, in the prime stage, you've got a mechanism for conflict resolution. Conflicts are inevitable. Everybody will have his own opinion. It's perfectly okay, no problem. But the issue is, how do you resolve them? You also have independent directors as advisors who can add diversity to your thinking. They bring in an outside view. Now, it doesn't have to be a director. It can just be an advisor, because on the board, you don't need to have an outside professional for a mid-sized company, and neither does he want to come on your board because of the liabilities involved. But as advisor, as a sounding board, as a coach, to bring in somebody with a multi-industry experience who's got white hair adds a lot of value. So now I come to this question, and I'd like to throw this question on the group. Which stage are you in the life cycle? I invite you, anybody who would like to ask, just raise your hand and Dinesh can call out the name one by one and just share a sentence or two of which stage do you think you are in the life cycle and why? This is the curve we were discussing. Are you in the go-go stage? Are you in the adolescent stage, or are you in the prime stage? Anybody, it's open to you. Maybe you can type the letter Q in the question box and Dinesh can call out the name. I see there's a lot of hesitancy to speak, but you're welcome. Anybody? Dinesh, can you see anybody who's...
No, not yet.
Yaman, can you see anybody raising hands, or I don't have
Mr.
visibility?
Amit Jain has mentioned that he's in the prime stage. He has written it on chat.
Okay.
That
okay.
He's on prime stage, and Mr. Ishwar Murthy has also mentioned that he's on prime stage. So if they would like to speak something about that, they're most welcome.
Yeah, so Harsh, good morning. This is Amit here. I attended your session some years back as well when it was done by ACMA, and so I don't know if you recall that.
Okay. Yes, yes.
So I mean, from the learnings that we had at that time, we have already charted out a family constitution for the business. As of now, there are four of us in the family business: my father, my uncle, my brother, and myself. And the way the road that we have taken, I mean, the journey that we have started is that we have adopted the TQM journey, and a lot of the issues have been segregated in terms of conflict resolution by the, as far as the running the business is concerned. And for the family part, we have also constituted a family charter. It was done with the help of advisors from PwC. And I think you know Mr. Praveen Bamni.
Ibambani, yes.
Yeah. So he helped us in getting it put across along with his team. And it took us about a year to chart it out. And within the family, we have a prime consensus, but it's still a premature stage, I would say, especially from the business perspective. Me and my brother have our roles defined, and in order to avoid any conflicts, we started TQM last year, just before the COVID was shaping up. And with that, a lot of you know um, debates have been shut because now everybody is focused on driving the core values and targets and KPIs, and the team is aligned. Um, that's what I can share. I mean, so far it has been good, and but let's see. I mean, future.
Okay, excellent. Very good. Thank you. So that's good. It was good to see 2-3 people saying they're in the prime stage, because in most talks I've given, very few, maybe only 2 or 3 out of 100 are able to make that statement. So those of you are, clap, clap, clap. Very good. Excellent job done. Not many make it to the prime stage. I was seeing 2 or 3 in the text box. And we'll come back to you once we've run through this session. We'll have a Q&A session. Okay. Right. So now, we are going to discuss these 4 disruptions which every family business faces in its journey. First is the founder's command and control leadership style. The second is the inability to attract professional talent, internal conflict, and unequal contribution by family members. हाथ की सब उंगलियां बराबर हो ही नहीं सकती. You can never have an equal contribution from every family member. So the expectation itself has to be reset. And I'll discuss that in a moment. So let me quickly move on. So, the founder's command and control leadership, it works very well in the infancy and the go-go stage, because it's a one-man show. He has all the strategy in his head. He has everything in his head. It's a one-man show. So he gives instructions, do this, do that, do this, do that, and people implement it, and it works. And you need that leadership style in the first stage, first 10 years, 15 years. But the journey from 100 to 1,000 crores or adolescence upwards is different from the journey from 0 to 100, and you need a different set of leadership skills. You cannot micromanage the business anymore. I was in Bombay, and I was taking a feedback from one of the founders there of a mid-sized company. Now it's about 400 crores. So I asked him, I said, do you, sir, micromanage your business? He said, no, I used to, but now I don't. Then I asked the people below him, the GM level, the function heads. I was running a program for them, how to professionalize and scale a family business. So in that context, I asked them, all right, tell me what can be improved, what needs to change to take the company to the next level. And they gave a wonderful window of ideas, because they're the people on the ground. So one of them said, sir, one of the biggest problems is that our founder who knows everything has become a bottleneck. Because he sits in the middle of the open plan office and all decisions percolate to him. And we are all GMs with 15, 20 years experience, but we taking zero decisions. We are like supervisors. Because the founder is sitting right there and he's available for all decisions, they all go up to him. So he's micromanaging it. Even if a light bulb has to be changed on a floor, unless he says it doesn't happen. Then I gave this feedback back to the founder as to how he needs to distance himself and allow them to work. And only the big decisions and the strategic decisions need to come to him. Otherwise, he was working a 12-hour day, a 14-hour day, and they are sitting idle. And this happens very often because the founder loves this company so much that he finds it difficult to distance himself from day-to-day operations. And there's so much power and authority in one person's hand that the others just step aside. So this obsession with control stifles growth. So the question to you is, can the founder change his leadership style to trust and delegate without losing control? He still has complete control, but he changes his leadership style from command and control to trust and delegate. So now comes the question, what should the founder do then? What should he do? You know, the biggest roadblock is that the founder himself has to accept that he needs to change, he needs to evolve. You can't manage a teenage daughter the way you managed her when she was 2 years old. So when you have a multi-locational business, you have to change your leadership style. Those who can, they will grow the business. Those who can't will throttle the business or control it or over-regulate it. They'll strangle their own business. They themselves will become a bottleneck. And remember, a founder will never be given this feedback by the team which reports to him, because he's God for them. He is the ultimate decision maker. So they will say, sir, aap to mahan hai. You are the ultimate, sir. That the Himalayan strategy you created has taken us places, and they will tell him things he wants to hear. But it is very difficult for him to get an unbiased, objective feedback. Because we all have blind spots. We all have, we all need to change and improve ourselves as the company grows, as we grow. So unless the founder realizes this and takes a feedback, so the solution to this is two solutions. One is the top peer group. You know, this is something that a famous promoter of India started in Bombay about 10 years back. He formed this Ascent, a group called Ascent, where groups of 5-6 promoters from different industries meet once in a month for 1 hour, 1 to 2 hours, over chai and pakoras, just to brainstorm what they're doing, what are the challenges they are facing, and how they can learn from each other. So it's a totally open end over a coffee session, totally unregulated as to how they can learn from each other. And they learn a lot of things because they're all from different industries, but at the same stage of development. The second thing that the founder should do is to set up a 360-degree feedback loop. When I go and help companies and work with them, I meet the founders, I meet the function heads, one level below them, and the people around them, the other family members and other people who are roughly the same level, or other family members. So you need to have a 360-degree view of the person to get an objective assessment of what are the areas of improvement. Some of the most powerful leaders in India are very humble people who are always learning from others. You take Narayan Murthy, you take Harsh Mariwala, who's built a 20,000 crore business from scratch, from zero in 1 generation. Aziz Premji, his father had a soap business and he's built India's biggest software company, or one of the biggest software companies. He's very humble. He used to drive a second-hand car until he was a billionaire. And he's always open to learning. Okay, tell me, do you have a better idea than mine? Tell me, batao. Let's move forward. And they really took their company up. Then we come to the next point, the second point, the second roadblock. That's the inability to attract professional talent. You know, success is dependent on best-in-class talent. That's a given. So the question is, are you able to attract and retain the best talent? The best in class for your industry and your size. You know, ISB Hyderabad did a study of 5 famous Indian families: Murugappa Group, Dabur, Wadia, Godrej, Kirloskar. They're all household names. So what did they do differently? They are all fourth generation, very successful, diversified groups. There are thousands of others who did not make it to that level. What did they do differently to make it to this level? And the answer is on the next slide. They built a culture. They built a high performance culture where the people are totally motivated and working on their own, and they don't need to be supervised, and they're highly charged, motivated, and they are saying, just let me go. So building a company culture takes time, and you can't copy a culture. You can't say, I'll put a TT table and become Google tomorrow. Also, it depends on your industry, your size. So you have to think about this and you have to craft, and it has to flow from the values of your company, of the founder and the founding family. What are your values? And you can't copy anybody's culture, and you can't mimic culture because people can see through that. It has to be an authentic, bottom-up performance, high performance culture. So what is this? Organizational culture is critical to performance. Even talented professionals can't perform in toxic, political, territorial, and bureaucratic cultures because half their energy is wasted in internal friction and tough battles. So if you have 100 units of energy and 50 units are wasted in internal tough battles, only 50 will be available to take your company forward. So how do you build a high performance culture? And the next question is, what exactly is a high performance culture? Can you describe it in one sentence? Here it is. You know, do you have employees who look forward to Monday morning? They can't wait for Sunday to be over to get back to work. They're totally self-charged, motivated. They are not the 9 to 5 type saying, I'm looking at my watch, when it is 5 o'clock and let me just get the hell out of this place. Naak apna dawa ke kaam karo and just somehow manage to pass your day. Why? Because you have to pay the house rent, your children's school fees, and so on. So you're doing a job because you have to earn the money, not because you love your job. You're motivated and you're charged up and you're enjoying what you do. So can you build a culture where employees look forward to Monday morning? I run a program for many companies on that, and this is the answer is different for different companies. But it's a fascinating question. If you're able to do this, if you're able to do this correctly, you are moved to the next level without any effort from your part. Your team will take you up. You don't have to do anything. You have to just set the right culture and values in place. Do you see this photograph? Now, what's this? Is this your head of sales coming to office on Monday morning? If you have people who are charged like this, you know, sitting on a horse, trying to come to office on a Monday morning, totally charged, totally motivated, then your job is done. Let me give you 4 more things which you have to keep in mind when you're building a high performance culture. One is your employees should take ownership for successes and failures. If they've succeeded, yes, thank you, I've done a good job. If I failed, sorry, my mistake, I own it up. I'm not passing the buck to somebody else. I will correct it. And owners don't punish failures. They accept failures. They allow them to take chances. They allow them to try innovative things. Because if you have a culture where the owner punishes failure, nobody will try anything new. Why should he take a risk? He'll be punished for failure. But if the owner accepts failure as a part of growing up, then it's going to work. The energy level has to be high. You know, I can walk into an office or a factory and you can see the energy level. Is it throbbing with energy? People are excitedly talking in groups saying, how do we do this? How do we crack this problem? How do we take the company to the next level? Or is the energy level very low? People are looking at their watch, having a cup of tea and totally de-energized. पता नहीं क्या होना है, कुछ पूछना है, अरे सेठ जी से पूछो भाई, मेरे पास क्यों आ रहे हो? Go to the owner. Nobody takes ownership. You also need employees with high creativity and innovation, because all wisdom, remember, doesn't reside at the top of the company. A lot of wisdom resides at the bottom. So the people who are actually doing the work on the shop floor, they come up with a lot of interesting ideas which can be implemented, and if you are willing to listen and reward and recognize. And people have to take pride and purpose in their work. So you have to build a culture. So if you do these 4 things and you get people who look forward to Monday morning, then your problem is solved. You can go for an Alaskan cruise for 2 weeks and your company will run click, clock, no problem. Then we come to the most interesting part of today's discussion. Internal conflict in a family business is inevitable. You look at Gautam Singhania, you look at the Ambani brothers. So from the chemist across the road to India's richest family, there will be a conflict. It's a part of life, nothing wrong, and not to be worried about it. It's a reality, because we all think differently. The question is, how do you manage it? How do you manage it, and how do you motivate everybody so that they still give their best ideas and you all work together and you enjoy working together, despite your different opinions? And I've done a lot of research in this. I worked with Dr. Ichak Adizes in California, and his lifetime's work is on how do you manage internal conflict in a family business. He's written some 10 books. He's like a guru, and he's done a lot of research. And I worked with him for 3 years as to how do you align everybody in one direction so your energy is not dissipated. Everybody supports each other and helps each other. And when you come to office in the morning, you're not tense. Your gut muscles are not, knotted up. And you're saying, what will he say? What will dad think? What will my son say? What will this happen? Should I talk to my brother or not? You're humming a tune. You're very happy. You're humming a tune when you walk into office. You don't bring arguments from the shop floor onto your dining table at home at night. So now we move to how do you actually do this? Price Waterhouse did a global survey. They do one every year. And 2 of the challenges they found in 2018, out of 10 challenges, these are not just the only 2, there are 10 challenges. But these are 2 I picked up for just to demonstrate to you. Succession is one, unplanned succession. And conflict between family members is very common globally. So you have to take it on board, accept it as a way of life and move forward. No problem. Everybody has it. Whether it's Ambani brothers or your Sabziwala across the road, it's a reality, and how do we deal with it? It's okay. Don't be defensive about it. No, my family has no conflict. We are perfect. We are perfectly aligned. We love each other a lot. Nothing, there's no problem. That won't work. You have to do the opposite. You have to, yes, we agree on these 10 things. We disagree on these 3 things. Let's put them on the table, put a spotlight on those 3 problems, and let's sort them out. Let's talk it over. Let's find a solution. And you need to build a culture for that. This was a talk I gave in Nasik to 120 family business owners on how do you build unity in a family business. Because the culture cannot be built overnight. It takes months and years. And this is a subject of great interest to everybody. Because managing differences within a family between brothers, siblings, across generations is a part of life. I mean, it's okay. Nothing wrong with it. You don't have to hide it. It's okay. It's a part of life. It's just a question of how can you best manage it. This was, I did a webinar for Sikh Chamber of Commerce. Now, if you know Sikhs, they're very successful business persons. And one of the cultural things in Sikhs is Singh is king. So if you have a Sikh family where there are 3 kings in one kingdom, you can understand they'll take time for them to align themselves, whether it's father, son, or 2 brothers. Because culturally, they like to win. They like to play to win. And they are very successful. They're very successful in business and otherwise, whichever field they choose. But this is an area which they've been thinking about. So when I did this webinar for the Sikh leadership of business leadership, I got a lot of interesting feedback. This is a workshop in Bombay, in the Bombay Chamber of Commerce boardroom, where 12 families for half a day we spent, discussing how do you best align everybody in one direction within a family. And everybody had his own ideas, and it's like a brainstorm session over a coffee. People across different industries. This is about a few years back, 4 years back. So the question is, every family member in business will have his own temperament, his values, his vision, his capability, and seniority in the family organization structure. How can they all work together in harmony to take the business to the next level? That's the fundamental question. So the question to you is, everybody is in the same boat, but are you aligned? Are you rowing together? The next question is, how's teamwork in your family business, in your family? You might be, if you were to give it a number, you might be, say, 60%. But it's worth it making an effort to reach 80%, 90%, because the more aligned you are, the less energy you will waste in internal friction. And you have to plan for it, you have to design it, you have to build a culture of mutual trust and respect so that you enjoy working together and you are all able to contribute to the business in different ways. I walked into some family council meetings and board meetings, and sometimes they you have board meetings where it's very soft spoken. The founder asks everybody for an opinion on a major decision. Everybody gives his opinion. Then he says, all right, I've heard everybody. This is the way we will go. And everybody agrees, even if his own view was different. Then there are other family businesses where, the volume is very loud and everybody is shouting, but nobody is listening. And 15 minutes in a family council meeting, one can very clearly know which way the family is heading. Sometimes the business is doing very well, but the relationships are not doing well. And that needs to be fixed, because ultimately there'll be a problem long term. So the tone and the volume and the way people relate to each other in a family council meeting or in a family business meeting can tell you a lot. When two people are in love, they whisper to each other and there's perfect understanding. If two people are angry, they're shouting and screaming at each other, but they're not able to hear what the other is saying. They're not able to hear. Why? Because they're busy shouting, they're not able to hear. Which is okay. There will be some family members who will be loud. There'll be some who will be soft. It's okay. That's a part of life. No problem. So these are very quickly the triggers of conflicts in the family business. Because you got to first analyze why every family is unique. I work with so many families. Every family is unique. You cannot put one solution for everybody. It doesn't work. So these are the triggers. And they're not all the triggers, but they capture most of the triggers. One is communication breakdown. But remember, communication breakdown is caused by something else. There's a root cause somewhere else which causes a breakdown in communication. But you have to watch out for this, because if there's a breakdown communication, that means things are going south. Sometimes you have temperaments which are incompatible. They have different personalities. They can't work with each other. Fine, let's accept that and find a way to find a solution. Sometimes there's a conflict of interest. Who will be the next chairman of the company between the siblings? Somebody may be younger but be more capable. Somebody may be, family tradition might say that the oldest son or the oldest daughter becomes the next CEO. So there's a clear conflict of interest and you have to find a solution. Sometimes the founder doesn't let go because he's, after all, built the business. He spent his entire life building it. So how can he just walk away? So he continues. So there are many people in the second generation who are waiting in the wings for 10 years, for 20 years. So you need to find a solution for that. then often the roles and responsibilities are not clearly thought through and people are stepping on each other's toes. So all you need to do is redesign the roles and responsibilities clearly, and you have to spend a little time on this. But once that is done, it will remove a lot of problems. It will remove a lot of crossed wires. And sometimes you have backseat driving. In many cases, I've seen the founder gives up control. He moves back. Okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to build a temple. All my energy. But he comes back to the business, each time, or he gives instructions from the backseat. So the question really comes down to, how does your family build consensus? There'll be 8 things you'll agree on. There'll be 3 things you will slightly agree on. Some you will completely disagree on, which is okay. Part of life. How do you build consensus? How do you come to a common agreement on major decisions? Which location should you have for a new factory? Whether you should diversify your business? Whether you should increase your leverage? What dividend you should pay? Do you have a policy for dividend in your company? Whatever be the point of discussion. So if I were to summarize internal conflict, you have to ask yourself these questions. Are family relationships better or worse today than they were 2 years back? Are you in a downward spiral and not knowing it and not noticing it and hoping that it will improve on its own? I'll ignore the problem, apne aap theek ho jayega. That's not the solution. I have seen in many families, it's like a cancer which destroys your company, it destroys your health, and it destroys your relationships. So you can't take it for granted or assume that it will take care of it, apne aap it will become okay. It will not. You have to take it on the table, discuss it out, work it out. And don't allow your hairline cracks to widen to unbridgeable gaps. Take action early. If you sense there's a problem coming up, talk it over, put it on the table, put a spotlight on the problem, and find a solution. This is a very interesting chart. And of everything that I've said, this really summarizes how you can really help yourself. Because this is what I do with families. And I run this program, and you can do this yourself. And that's why I'm taking you step by step through this, because this is really the solution to everything, to all the 4 points we discussed today morning. So first thing is, when I run this family business program, I make the family go out, to go out to a resort outside the city, somewhere where they're not distracted by day-to-day operations. Somebody is coming in, sir, check sign kar dijiye, do this, do that. Then you can't sort it out. You have to go to a place which is a 1 hour's drive from your normal place of work. And it can be a hotel, ideally, something with a water body, which makes you relax. Last year in September, what did Mukesh Ambani and his family do? And this is public knowledge. It's not my personal knowledge. He went to a resort in Switzerland with all his family members for a few days, some luxury resort in Switzerland on the hills, to sit with all his 3 children and their spouses and to decide who will do what and how are we going to work together. Now, Mr. Ajay Shriram in a recent webinar, I was saying, he says the 3 brothers, we go to the Himalayas every year for 4 days with an outside behavioral scientist or consultant, somebody they have. And we discuss what is working, what is not working. How can we improve the way we work together? So they take time out. So I do this, make the family do time out. Go to a golf resort outside, a green place, you walk on the lawns, talk it over, and you go through this 5-6 steps, and it helps the family reset the relationships. Nothing happens overnight, but it makes you change direction. And if you follow that over a period of time, you'll be moving in a completely different direction. You'll enjoy working with your other family members. So first step, what we do in this family business program is have a 1-to-1 meeting for 1 hour with every family member to understand their vision, their aspirations, where do they want to go, how is the business fitting into their personal life, and what are the pain points as he sees them. Everybody has a different idea of pain point. The founder has a different idea. The children have a different idea. The second is very important. It's a group diagnosis. We sit around a table outside the factory, outside the normal place of work, and we have a half-day session on how do we work together? And it's a structured agenda where, everybody opens up, comes out in t-shirts over a coffee, relax. It's not a suit and tie meeting. It's a relaxed t-shirts and jeans meeting where people actually say what they think. They're not political. They're not trying to please anybody. They actually say what they think is good for the business, good for the family. Then we do a culture and climate survey, which is a 15-point questionnaire for everybody, including the function heads below the family, because they have a lot of information and they can provide a lot of support and assistance. And we tell them we are doing a survey to help you improve, professionalize and scale a family business. So they're very open. It really helps to spend an hour each with them and understand. Then we move to the solution, which is another half-day session outside on values and vision alignment, because everybody's vision doesn't have to be same. Very often the second generation is looking at a 20% growth. The father is looking at a 5% growth. He's saying, what's the need to take risks? But you have to talk it over and align your values, align your vision and align your values. And we do this over 1 hour over a coffee, talk it over, give you examples of other companies, how they're doing it. What do you think? And you build a consensus. Yeah, I think this is the right way to go for us. Let's all go for 10% growth. Otherwise, one family member is taking a decision based on 20% growth. One is taking a decision based on 5% growth. So there'll be problems every day. Then, we share best practices of successful families. What is the Munjal family doing? What is the Murugappa family doing? What's Harsh Mariwala doing? How have they solved the same problems? And why have they made it to where they have, to the place they've already made? And last, most important, is to draft a family charter. Now, if you're a Ambani, Adani of that size, you need a formal constitution because you got tax angles and you got, companies spread over 50 countries. But if you're a mid-sized business, you don't need a constitution. You just need a simple charter, which is a 5-10 page document on how are you going to work together. What's going to be a dividend policy? Should spouses work in the company? What should be the compensation principles? Very often you will see in a multi-generational family, there'll be people who worked for 20 years and somebody who's just passed out and joined the company. So what are the principles on which you will structure their salary? You obviously can't pay the person who just joined same as somebody who's worked for 20 years. Although in the family hierarchy, they may be brothers. So how do you, mix and match? Inheritance may be equal, but do you pay the same salary? Is it fair? Is it wise? Is it right? And if you take a family like, I'm going back to a well-run family like the Munjal family. If they have 20 family members in business, somebody is the CEO and somebody is just entered, you obviously can't pay the same salary to the CEO and somebody who's a trainee. So you have to rethink how you peg every family member's salary to the market value of that job. So this is about building a family charter. I have 10 minutes more and then we'll open up for questions. So, building a family charter is very important because like we discussed, the core values have to be defined and discussed. Ethical principles, the roles and responsibilities, compensation guidelines. In one family, I remember working, the elder brother used to travel business class. The younger brother said, no, we are short of cash these days. Why should I waste money? I'll always go economy. And later when they got married and the spouses came in the scene and, it didn't work out and their values were different. Somebody, the elder son is he's driving a BMW 7 Series, or the younger son says, look, we just put up a factory, we are short of cash, so I'll just use the Innova that I've been using. Mere koi problem nahi hai. But, long term, that is not sustainable. So you have to agree on all these things. So this is what you have in a family charter. How are you going to work together? What are the principles of compensation and what makes sense to everybody? Aram se, sit over a coffee and work it out. And what are the results of this program? Because this is most important. It's a new beginning. It's not an overnight change, but it's a reset of relationships. At the end of this program, the relationships get reset. It's a new beginning, a new direction. It clears up channels of communication and it creates an energized atmosphere where people enjoy working with each other. In a recent family, I was working with a company where the chairman, who's the founder, He said, look, whenever we have a 1 hour drive to office and I tell my son to accompany me, he makes some excuse or other. He just doesn't want to drive with me. And son is trying to avoid his dad. He's saying, I don't want to sit with him for 1 hour and get gyan. I want to drive on my own, at my own. I want to listen to music or whatever I want to do. And father was getting more and more irritated. 4 times I've told him to drive with me. I want to discuss this. There's so many important things on the table and he just avoids me. Whereas if you've sorted these things out, you'll actually enjoy a drive together. So the question is, do you enjoy a drive together? Do you go once a year, the whole family out on a vacation? Because these are bond building exercises that you must do, and they are part of best practices of all big families, all families, not just big and small. So we develop, we do a very precise diagnosis of exactly what is wrong, where are the crossed wires, and what needs to be done. Then we make a roadmap in consultation with everybody. Okay, so this is how we are going to resolve the major issues. Sometimes it means separation of one family member. He just wants to do something on his own and he should be given the resources and time because he's never going to fit in. He's temperamentally so different that he's not going to fit in. He wants to work on his own, let him work on his own. Enable him, give him the resources, give him the support. Everybody is going to be happy. But that is in 5% cases. 95% cases, it can be worked out. And lastly, you will find a jump in the growth, the profitability, and the longevity of business. One of the famous industrialists of India at a recent CII webinar said that 94% of family managed businesses don't go beyond the 3rd generation. But the 6% who do, they go on and on and on because they've understood what it takes to run a multi-generational family business. We come to the last point. I have 5 minutes and then I'll open it up for questions. Inequality. Now, every family member cannot make the same contribution to the business. This creates a lot of problems. I've seen in many companies, recently 2 brothers had come to me and a Jain family, very successful, between 100, 200 crores. And the elder brother is putting in a 12-hour day, really driving the business. And the younger brother, he's typically in office for half a day. He's not interested. He doesn't have it in him. His interest is somewhere else. But this is, they were finding this. Initially, it was all right. They brought up in the same house. But later, after they got married, and it became a problem that one person is working a 12 hours day and the other is only working a 6-hour day. So the first step, the first step is acceptance that it will never be perfectly equal. Haath ki sab ungliyan barabar ho hi nahi sakti. So to expect that everybody will make the same contribution is not realistic. That's a starting point. But we can manage a 20-30% up and down. Also, you will find over a period of time, 10 years later, different people will be making different contributions. 20 years later, somebody typically will develop a health problem and suddenly the thing will change. So at different points of time, different family members will make different contributions. So the solution is to find the right functional fit. Who has a flair for marketing? Who's a great relationship builder? Who's great in technology and IT? Who's a good engineer and he wants to be in the factory and he wants to put up projects and new factories, and utilize the right person in the right functional fit. If you do that, you will be able to complement each other and make a rainbow. The idea is you can't have everybody in technology. It doesn't work, and that's not the right way. So the skills should complement each other. It's like a rainbow. Everybody brings a different color to the rainbow, and it makes a beautiful impact because people are all different. So they will make different contributions. So the question is, can the family blend together to be a rainbow? And the solution lies in finding the right functional fit. And sometimes allowing one member to exit if it just doesn't work out. And keep him happy, keep the business happy, rather than keep an unhappy family member in business doing things he doesn't want to do. They'll kill the business, it'll kill the family relationships and create a problem for everybody. And this is a judgment issue. Over a coffee, you have to sit down, talk it over, discuss it, and find the right solution, which works for everybody. So this is the summary of the 4 disruptions. as I close my part. This is the solution we already discussed. I'm just recapping it. One-to-one meetings, a group diagnosis outside your normal place of work, in a farmhouse, in a lawn, outside Goa, wherever you want to go. A climate and culture survey to find out where you are today. So you need to precisely diagnose where are the crossed wires today so that you can fix them. Then you have to align your value. And this is all about running and managing a multi-generational family business. Every family goes through the same travails. And of course, drafting a family charter. For your size, not a constitution, a family charter. So we come to Q&As, and let me stop sharing my screen and over to you for questions. Anybody has a question, Dinesh can coordinate. Either you can type a Q or you can just raise your hand on Zoom and go ahead. It can be a general question. Yeah, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Ishwara Murthy. We met in Chennai. I hope you remember. I'm Bala's brother.
Oh, okay.
I was attending your last virtual meeting also.
Okay, in Chennai.
Yeah.
Oh, welcome.
See, me and my brother Bala both are the founder. I am 62 and he is 72. So now the younger generation, 3 boys have come, all are professionally graduated. 2 of them are with us the last 15 years and my son is last 5 years. We have 2 different businesses. One is oil and gas, another is automobile and earth moving equipment, OE manufacturing. The youngsters always, they bring new ideas and investment of 10 to 15 crores and they don't have any experience over these areas. And when we say unless you have a right experience, you cannot venture in these new ideas and you cannot completely depend on the professionals. So every time it becomes a demotivating kind of things. So whether the experience is a must or you can rely upon the new recruitment professional kind of things.
So that's a very legitimate and normal question. I was giving a talk in Bangalore to exactly the same point you raised. And one of the builders said, look, my son keeps coming up with harebrained ideas of new projects. And I have done 30 years in this trade and I know what works, what doesn't work. And if I try to stop him, he becomes angry and we get into an argument. So how do we decide on whether a particular investment is right or not? Or whether we should go in a particular direction? So, sir, the answer I'll tell you is what? I've applied for a lot of, the same question comes up in a lot of families. You have to do a proper project evaluation and make your son or nephew or whoever has brought the proposal. And you have to have a clear criteria that it has to give a certain rate of return. It has to do risk analysis. It has to give cash flow. He has to make a 10, 15 page. He has to study before he brings he should not just drop an idea on the dining table or your breakfast table. Hey, dad, let's spend 15 crores on this thing. My friend told me it's a very good idea.
The papers are not coming always.
So there is the solution. Your rule in the family should say, I don't discuss any proposal without backup. Just like a professional board, if a proposal comes up to a board of directors of any mid-sized company, what will they do? They'll say, all right, let's evaluate the proposal on its merit, not because he's my son or nephew or what. It should make sense. Otherwise, the company will go down the drain. So you have a set of criteria. Give an executive overview. The second page should understand what the market background is. Where is the savings going to come from? Is it an expansion project? you have to give the rationale and the justification. You have to do the risk analysis, and you have to give the rate of return. If I invest so much, then the funding. So if he does his homework and he takes the trouble to do his homework, the answers will automatically emerge. Then nobody has to say yes or no. The answer is on the table for you. Whereas if he comes down and says, no, dad, let's put 15 crores in a business like this, it's very good, without doing his homework, you say, sorry, the rule says the board include, and you can, it's good to have an independent professional advisor on your board saying, look, we all have to formally meet. Otherwise, it's not my decision. We have to agree. And if it passes muster, sure, we are happy to invest. But if it doesn't pass muster, then sorry, there's no question of investing it. So, make the evaluation professional and merit based, not relationship based. And it will work out. If he brings in a proposal without a proper background, say sorry, no, no.
Okay, thank you.
Even, if you have any generic questions, not necessarily, at times you're reluctant to speak about certain issues of your own family, that you can talk to me separately one-to-one, that's okay. But even if you have any generic issues or anything, please feel free. This is like learning from each other.
Yeah, you almost spelled out everything, what is happening in the family charter, and how the difference and efficiency level, time, many things. You are well aware of the family business scenario.
I've got white hair, I worked 30 years in the corporate world. So, that gives you a flavor of how large organizations work on merit and meritocracy. And then when you work in family businesses, which I've done for the last 10 years, you are able to compare the two and understand what works, what doesn't work.
Correct. Yes, Mr. Jain, please.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about you mentioned about building a high performance culture within the business, and that is, so this is what we are also trying to do, but we are not getting the results. I mean, we are not able to, despite of empowering the team, the functional heads, somehow that alignment and that ownership within the team is not coming up, and people still believe in that blame game scenario situation, that like we roll out a plan and throughout the month things are we don't communicate very often that we have a structured review and everybody has to present, and in that review they just start to come up with blame game. This person did not do this person, and my question is always to them that why did you not communicate within yourself? And then somehow or the other they just golmaal karke cheezon ko, so and as far as we want to build that high performance culture, which is why we took up the journey of TQM, and it all incorporates pretty much everything. Like earlier there used to be some communication gaps between me and my brother. Like he had his way of doing things, I had my way. So we sat together, we listed out KPIs for the business for each function in terms of sales growth, quality, customer satisfaction, whatnot for the staff, employees. And we said that, okay, we gave those KPIs to the team. But the team is not now able to, I mean, they are putting in the effort, but not very diligently to show the results.
Okay. So Amit, that's a good point. It takes years to build a high performance culture, whether it's a Facebook or Google or, what.
Yeah.
And if you look at, an employee, it takes years to build it. And while the quality program helps a lot, which you're doing, there's a cultural angle also, which you have to do. And it very often I do this one day exercise outside to really get down to the diagnosis unless you really fix the crossed wires and understand why the blame game is happening, which is very common in many companies. They pass the buck. Stores did issue the material in time, so the salesperson say, my customers are not getting the right quality from the factory. How can I expand? So that's a very common thing. So to avoid that, you have to have ownership. Yes, this is my mistake. I will correct it. I'm not passing the buck, and this time I've done well. I should get credit for it. And to build that culture takes time, and it starts with the founder himself. It starts with the founder himself, because people are watching you all the time. If you are on walking your talk and you are on practicing what you preach, it will slowly flow down. So, I do a one-day workshop on building a culture and then leave the thread to the company. They have to take it from there. But it starts with the owner. It starts with the owner and then percolates downwards. And it's not easy, because in a survey I was reading recently, 80-85% of CEOs of large companies find that culture is a very powerful tool, but they don't know how to build it. Because it's not easy. Nobody can just create a Google or a Facebook culture suddenly overnight. If you look at an employee of Google,
that. I mean, which is why we did a lot of training programs we have conducted from the external faculties on leadership, ownership, delegation, empowerment. I'm not saying that things are not improving. They are getting there, but still that the small and little excuses that they make, those are still there. And eventually, I mean, because everybody is now clear in terms of what their roles and responsibilities are, what their KPIs are, and what they are measurable for. So that part is clear. And as far as, I mean, my role or my brother is concerned, we are not going out every day checking on anybody that, okay, aaj ye kara ya nahi kara. We say that, okay, we are going to review with you on a monthly basis. The plant, we put in place a plant head, which was earlier missing. So he is now also taking up. So gradually, I mean, I guess things will move up. We are positive about it. And
good. So you are on the right track. You're on the right track. You just maybe need to reset, the things right at the top. Your value proposition, your values, and your vision that needs to be probably aligned a little better. But you seem to be on the right track. Yeah. So.
Thank you.
If anybody has any other questions, otherwise we close. And can be,
just one question. Is it possible for you to share this presentation?
Yeah, just write to me. I will share it with you.
Okay. Thank you.
Because basically, this is all shared experiences. I've worked with so many family managed businesses and helped them align themselves internally. And especially the founder's leadership style. Because nobody gives an authentic feedback to the founder. People in power and authority don't get the right feedback. And everybody has blind spots. All of us have blind spots. So those of us who are willing to, take feedback, good and bad, from people around us and below us and above us, then, you are open to change and you're open to evolving your leadership style as the company grows. Because what worked in the first 10 years will not work in the second stage, 100 to 1,000 crore journey. Okay, so if there's any other questions or...
Mr. Shailesh has raised his hand, so
okay.
I think he wants to ask something.
Yeah. Yeah, please.
Sir, good morning, sir. It was a nice session, nice interaction, nice to know a lot of things. Sir, we've been in a business since last many years, maybe about 60 years before I even born. So my father this is the fourth generation business. You can say that my father started this business, automobile business, like a gas station, Indian Oil petrol pump, retail outlet. From there, we have started, and we have completed about more than 60 years. So 1961, my father started, my brother and all that. They have worked very hard. We are 6 brothers, 3 sisters, and my nephews and all that. Now we are having a business of automobiles, like a Tata dealership, commercial vehicles. So our whole family is totally involved in that business, because we got many branches and all that. Everywhere, we are all over in South Gujarat. Things are good. So far, we are doing very well. We are all having a very good, understanding, and we know each other properly. So things are very well. Now our nephews, sons are also started, they have studied. Now they started they started coming in a business now. Okay. Now we have to look some other more business or more opportunities to interact our all people who can, they work together and having a more different type of business. So far we have done it, but how to sustain in after what I mean to say in just wait. What you can say that in future, how we can do it in future, that is very important, because it's a huge family. It is more than 100, maybe 120 or 50 people altogether we are, and we are involving well, and we are doing so good so far. We are #1 dealer in commercial vehicles in Tata Motors. We have got many awards from Tata Motors, and we are managing. We are doing so good, no doubt about it. We have started another branch in Baroda also, but now new generations also coming up. So how we can do it more better? We have an industry also, export industry. We woven sacks industry. We manufacture the woven sacks, plastic materials and all that, and send it to Africa and all that places. We need to grow. We need to have more opportunities. How we can do better? So I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. Because see, my father, my brothers, all over, everyone done their work. Now in future, how we can do better?
That's a very good question, Shailesh ji.
Yes, sir.
क्योंकि अभी तक तो it was fine आपके, but I'm surprised you have 120 family members now.
Yes,
120 working in business?
Yeah, well, total family, but see, about 50 people are there.
50
from
okay.
our family. Yes, definitely.
Wow. Clap. The fact that
Thank
you
you,
have been
sir.
able to grow with 50 family members in business, and
Yes,
you
and
can't
thanks
manage
to
5 also.
You don't thank to me, sir. You thank to my father.
Yes, sure.
My
It's the
father,
founder.
he is the founder, and he is the one who has established everything, and he is the kind of like a culture he has given us. So that culture we are carrying on at this moment. 2 weeks ago, my father got expired, passed away. He was about 100 years old. He was 100-year-old, and he just left us 2 weeks back.
Oh, I see.
Yes, sir.
So now, is the time when if you have so many family members in business and the next generation is growing up and wanting to join the business, and where to
Yes.
fit them in, the big challenge comes, where to fit
Yes.
them into the business and how to compensate them.
Absolutely right. That is the thing. My nephew's 2 sons are already there in business, but not responsible. I mean, we have not given any responsibility. They do here and there kind of work, which is not right. I mean, I don't want to waste their time. And in my son also in Canada, and my brother's sons, we are all over the places. My brother's sons there in Australia, my son in Canada, my other brother in Canada. So, other nephew is in America. So we are all over the world, everywhere that is how we are set it up.
So you are very well spread out as of now, but now
we
is
are
the
spread
time.
out everywhere, sir.
Right. So you've so far done very well, and your founder must have been a visionary to to be able to keep it all together.
Absolutely right, sir.
And now
So
more
we-
so, if he's passed away and now a new generation has taken charge. So now all the more reason why you have to put a process in place and a system in place to prevent a problem for future. This is the right time, to really put a system and process in place. How will you absorb people where, and do not put any people without an allocated job. You just cannot put some person without a specific clear-cut responsibility. That should not be done. That create a problem.
That's what it is. Yes.
That creates a problem. Long term,
Absolutely.
he can manage for a few months or so,
See,
but
we are
eventually
doing
it create a
good
big
in
problem.
many business. We may not be doing good in other business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He may be a very good functional
That's
fit. You also have to see who's a good
So-
fit in which business. So this is a critical stage for your family to prevent.
That's right. So we have to
conflict
look
from
into
coming.
it, and then we
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
Definitely, sir. That's
Yeah,
what we need
yeah.
to do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your experience, Shailesh ji.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. It was a nice session, and we really enjoyed. We learned, and whatever we are making mistake, we may change. Like listening about your session, we may make it different in ourselves.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Right,
Anybody
sir.
else? If not, then we'll close. Dinesh, Yaman, do you see anybody with a hand up or?
Yes, Mr. Akhil Kapoor wants to speak, I guess.
Okay.
He raised his hand.
Okay.
Hi. Hello. So I really enjoyed the session in terms of the issues that you raised and the solutions that you've offered. I sort of have a question about the underlying theme here, which is how do I get, so I am the third generation in the business. I'm a part of the third generation, the newest entrant in the business. And I feel there are so many issues and clashes that maybe my elders are not particularly looking through, or they are not, they are sort of have their own equation of how they work through it. It's a family business. All the brothers are partners. So how do I get them to understand the importance of formation of a family charter?
Get them to meet me. No, they need it. They need it because without systems and processes, it'll create a problem.
Okay.
So you have to. Yeah, you have to convince them that bringing people up to the point of looking for intervention and outside support, help, etc. It's itself is a challenge because many founders I've seen, the younger generation has come to me, but dad is not willing. He's saying sab kuch theek chal raha hai, everything is fine. But the younger generation sees there's a big problem coming up, but they're not able to convince their head.
That's exactly the case for me. The elder generation, they see the problems. However, they don't see using a consultancy firm or professionals to be able to help. They don't see that as a solution.
Correct. Yeah.
And
That's
some of them, considering they are closer to retirement age, so for them, according to their perspective, things will fall into place on their own, which I just do not see happening in the last 4 years that I've been around.
And ask them, have things become better in the last 2 years, or are you in a downward spiral?
Okay.
Because if it's going down, then you need to do something.
Well, the business is performing better, which is what they what they talk about. But what I feel is in terms of work satisfaction, I see there is a decline.
Okay. Good point. And it's a very common point. Yeah. Very often in families, the founding generation does not see the need for any intervention or change. They are saying, sab theek chal raha hai, everything is fine. And the younger generation can see very clearly that there's a problem coming up.
I think coming from the younger side, or maybe being the newest entrant, another difference I think that you already pointed out was the work responsibility and the inequality in terms of the amount of time everyone is putting in, or the energy they're putting in. And I feel like that is something that drives the entire not wanting to listen to anyone else, because that is what they point out as well. But the founding generation doesn't want to accept it as a problem, and hence they don't want it to be solved. That's what I mean. That's what my understanding of where things are at the moment is.
Yeah, you sound very familiar, but I can't help you in this until you get your dad on board. Okay, anybody else before we close? Anybody? Last question. Okay, thank you very much for joining the session. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I was able to add value to you. I'm always available. If you just want to bounce an idea, sometimes, I just do a 1-hour session with some founder because he wants to just think, clarify in his own mind. He wants to crystallize his own thinking. So a couple of 3-4 1-hour sessions over a month, one in a week, helps them to just think through certain things, because he doesn't know who to talk to within the family. So he describes the situation, says, and then, an outsider can give him a solution. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, Harsh. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Sir.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.